Have you seen a stabilization in your incentive mechanism? Like, has it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think, most subnet owners, right? We've been through, a number of, times where miners have figured out mechanisms by which they can game the incentive mechanism, in the early sort of, this is now many months ago, but, we were seeing people, able to do sort of tag stuffing and add, tags that didn't enhance the data set, but, were able to sort of, trick our incentive mechanism into giving it higher scores because it was the most relevant tag. And then they just like added an S to it or an ing or like, thing. So, as you sort of evolve, you see more of that play out. Miners are super important to the ecosystem and to what we're building. We've actually really been focused on growing our miner community. So we've announced some pretty cool things there in terms of this like miner optimization toolkit. We rolled that out, I guess, maybe like 10 days ago. We've already seen like 100+ downloads of our Docker image on Docker Hub. It can now be run on anything from a Raspberry Pi to Mac, M Silicon. So, it's really flexible in terms of how quickly one click you can now get up and start mining. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Our miners are competing at a really high level. They're performing 50+% better than just kind of a GPT kind of 4.0 or kind of top end model for them. So it's still a very competitive landscape, but we just want to make the process of onboarding the best talent as easy as possible so they can start working on their models and their algorithms.
With onboarding customers, are you guys going to have to transition to a more privatized way of doing things to where people can upload proprietary data and get that tagged?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah, I mean, what we've really seen with enterprises, so we brought on a director of sales who came out of Microsoft and Deloitte just a couple months ago. We've really been ramping up sort of our enterprise sales outreach. My background is, I started my career at Disney. My co-founder sold his company, which was AdSense, to Google. So we have a lot of sort of enterprise relationships, understand the importance of privacy and sort of data protection. And what we've really focused on strategically is we think that social media data is, and sort of a lot of publicly accessible data is highly valuable in kind of a structured, format to these businesses. And we're seeing that, with, a lot of what we've done. I mean, obviously, Common Crawl is another good example, right? All of their data is public data. So, we're not having to, look at customer data or more sensitive data. I'm sort of flowing through the subnet. But we've, been from a evolution perspective, we're going to be very focused still over the next, number of months on kind of social media data as like the core thing we're going to monetize for enterprise. But we've been looking at, trusted execution environments. I know there's a few subnets, kind of looking to experiment there. We also think that there's a pretty exciting path with like privacy preserving tokens where businesses are basically doing sort of the anonymization of their data or working with us as a validator to do that before the data goes through to miners.
And with sticking to social media currently, the primary use cases for enterprise would be like sentiment analysis for their company and things of that nature.
I mean, there's a lot of signals that we think that you can derive from this. Where you're ultimately doing customized tagging of information to see if there's something that might trigger a risk of losing a customer, or there's just a lot of kind of customization that I think these businesses can sort of utilize by pulling in a lot of that social signal. So you've seen some of the groups, who are doing kind of the data aggregation layer, around social, and I think there's some value to that. But we think that there's even more value in like bringing insights to that data, and that's a big part of what we've been focused on here.
Would you related to almost as a wrapper in a sense on that the data aggregation layer?
Yeah, so I think you're going to see us launch, we're going to launch a product that effectively is like an end-to-end wrapper around, the subnet. So I think we're going to, enable businesses to use our pipeline directly, right? They can do that now. They can, ultimately there are free credits to start. And, we will be, selling that access, directly sort of via the validator. But we're also working with groups on how we can build out these AI models, for them, like we're doing with Common Crawl, and we're working with some others right now on that. And we look a lot at like sort of a Scale AI as kind of a model for like the business that we're building. So Scale AI has relied heavily on kind of human annotators, primarily overseas, to do a lot of the work for annotation. So the data privacy issue, I think, is a little bit more nuanced than is sort of talked about at a high level, because we all know about GDPR and like all of these kind of data privacy rules. But businesses have been comfortable with their data on an anonymized basis being shared with individuals, who are working, hundreds of thousands of them, right, who are working as independent contractors, tagging this data, across the world. So we don't think that that's big of a hill to climb, for a small amount of your data going out to individual miners, sort of on the network. And we've seen, we've seen customers who understand that and kind of see the analogy there. And then Scale has also been instrumental in working with a lot of these companies to structure that data for them and help build out these model systems. And so we've been doing that with Common Crawl. We're doing that with some others. So working with companies to leverage our structured data pipeline, but build on top of that. And then the final area, which is sort of what you were saying about a wrapper, is we also want to enable like really seamless products, end users to utilize, and they don't even necessarily have to be aware that Bittensor is under the hood, but the data processing is all happening via the subnet.
And then the partnership with Common Crawl, what exactly does that look like? How is that relationship defined?
Yeah, so we had a really good conversation with them just about, kind of what we had been doing, and sort of how we could leverage our structured data to provide a better resource for their company. They have moderators who are sort of working to provide insights to, AI researchers around the clock. And we took all of their data, a lot of it's from, sort of public stuff. We took data from their listserv and from their Discord, from the crawl itself, and we were able to provide a model to them, based on the structured data that we did with the subnet that is delivering highly accurate, information, to their researchers. So that now has sort of a real time updating feed. So we're pulling new information as it comes out on the listserv and the Discord, and structuring that data, putting it in, if it's relevant, into the vector database. So we're effectively have, kind of built out an AI agent system for them. The model lives on their site. It now also, lives on Discord and Slack for them.
Are there any sectors that want the structured data more than others, like financial researchers? Are you seeing any sectors like that that are really heavily interested?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say sort of on the enterprise side, there's we're talking to well, I sort of was alluding a little bit to this yesterday, but we really are, I'd say we're in the phase of also showcasing to the world like what structured data can do. So Common Crawl was a great partner to be able to say, okay, here's how we can enable, a really highly accurate, high quality model and resource like for your community. We've been working, with one of the leading creators on crypto Twitter. We think we're going to put out one of, if not the most sort of interesting, high quality AI agent, sort of in the vein of like an AI XBT. That's something that we've been working on for the last couple months. So that's pulling in lots of social media data. It's pulling in on chain data. So we want to keep enhancing the capabilities of and really showcasing to the world what you can do with structured data, and how we can help you accelerate your goals kind of with that.
And this AI agent is going to be Ready AI's AI agent, or you're doing it
No,
for?
this will be this creator's agent that we're powering.
Okay, all right. I don't want to pry too much into the details there. I don't
Yeah,
know if
we're
you're ready to
not
make
ready
that
to
announcement.
announce that just yet, but yeah, in the next couple weeks we'll we'll be talking about that a lot more.